Camp Crossville, Tennessee, September 1944. The air was thick with cold and silence. Sergeant Martha Reynolds stood behind the chain-link fence, her eyes fixed on the latest transport truck. It rumbled to a stop, its cargo unloading slowly. 37 German women stepped down. Their uniforms were tattered, barely hanging on. Faces pale, eyes hollow. Exhaustion carved deep lines into their skin. But their eyes, those eyes burned with defiance. They had fought, not just for survival, but for a cause now crumbled to dust. Months of Allied bombs had shattered their world. The final collapse in France had broken their units. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison adjusted his glasses. He scanned the manifest with a cold eye. "First batch of female prisoners we've had," he said. "Mostly radio operators, nurses, clerical staff. A few Luftwaffe communications specialists." Martha had run the women's section of the camp for 8 months. She was used to broken farm boys, conscripted factory workers. But these women were different. They had volunteered, believed in the Nazi cause. Now they were prisoners, in a land they had been taught to hate, a land called decadent, morally inferior. Among them, one stood out, tall, blonde, mid-20s, helping an older woman with a wounded leg. Her uniform bore the insignia of a communications auxiliary, but her bearing was that of a leader. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison pointed her out. "Ingrid Weber," he said, "former telephone operator from Munich. Captured trying to keep radio contact with retreating German units." She refused to talk during interrogation. Martha watched Ingrid's eyes. Cold, calculating. She scanned the camp, not like a prisoner, like a soldier still fighting. "These women have been told terrible things," Harrison said. "Torture, starvation, worse. They expect brutality. It's your job to show them the truth." The irony was bitter. Years of Nazi propaganda had painted Americans as monsters. Now, these women would see flush toilets, hot showers, 3 meals a day, treatment under the Geneva Convention, better than anything they'd known. Martha asked, "What's the first priority?" "Housing, medical screening, orientation?" Harrison closed the file. "Be patient. They'll be confused." The women moved as one, a tight cluster, protecting the weak. Even as prisoners, they held their solidarity. But Martha saw something else. The way they stared at the clean uniforms, the well-kept buildings, the trucks filled with food. Their eyes flickered with doubt. Inside the processing building, tension hummed. Whispers mixed fear and defiance. Ingrid sat straighter than the rest, jaw set, determined. "Registration will be individual," Corporal Davis announced. His German was rough, but effort counted. Medical exams, barracks assignments, camp rules. When Ingrid's name was called, she rose. Military precision. Followed Martha into a small office. Martha was younger than expected. Kind eyes. Fluent German. "I studied at the University of Heidelberg," she said. Ingrid's eyebrows rose. Was this a trick? Martha opened a thick folder. "You're 24 from Munich. Communications specialist with Army Group B. Captured near the Belgian border." Ingrid recited her name, rank, service number. "That's all I'm required to give." Martha smiled. "This is an interrogation. It's orientation." Through the window, Ingrid saw other women. No chains, no harsh guards. American soldiers laughed and joked. Nothing like the horrors described in Nazi films. "What happens now?" Ingrid asked. "You'll share a barracks with 5 others. 3 meals a day. Work details. Laundry, kitchen maintenance. Recreation. Books. Letters home." Ingrid's eyes widened. "Letters? Once a week. Through the Red Cross. Is there someone in Munich to notify?" Martha asked. Ingrid's composure cracked. "My mother, she doesn't know what happened." Martha nodded. "We'll get word to her." They walked the camp. American soldiers nodded politely. No jeers. No threats. Gardens bloomed. Prisoners tended vegetables. Men played soccer. Guards watched without tension. "This doesn't make sense," Ingrid muttered. "We were told American camps were brutal," Martha said gently. Ingrid said nothing. Her confusion was clear. They reached the women's barracks. Clean wooden building. Windows that opened. Heating. Ingrid stepped inside and froze. Ingrid's eyes scanned the room. It was nothing like the prison camps she had imagined. No barbed wire cages. No filthy floors. No stench of fear and filth. Instead, there were clean beds, soft sheets, a small locker for her few belongings, windows that let in sunlight, heat that chased away the cold. She moved slowly, touching the bed. It felt unreal. Martha watched her carefully. "There's something else you should see," she said. Ingrid followed her down a narrow hallway. They stopped before a small door. Symbols Ingrid didn't recognize were painted on it. Her heart pounded. What new horror awaited? The door opened. Inside was a small room. White porcelain gleamed under bright electric lights. The air smelled clean, disinfectant, not decay. Ingrid stared. A toilet. A flush toilet. She stepped closer, hesitant. "This is for prisoners," she whispered. Martha nodded. "All the barracks have indoor plumbing." Ingrid reached out and pressed the handle. Water swirled smoothly. The bowl emptied and refilled. She blinked. In Germany, even officers didn't have this. Most soldiers used outdoor latrines. During the war's final months, clean water was a luxury. "This is home," Ingrid said softly. Voices echoed from other barracks. Gasps. Excited chatter. The sound of toilets flushing. One woman began to cry. Was it relief? Shame? Overwhelm? Ingrid's mind raced. She remembered the lies. The propaganda. "We were told Americans were savages," she said quietly. "That they starved prisoners, tortured them. That their cities were crime-ridden. That their soldiers were criminals." Martha nodded. Propaganda works both ways. "We were told terrible things about Germany, too." Ingrid sank onto her bed. Her hands trembled. Around her, other women explored. Clean mattresses. Windows that opened. Lockers for their few possessions. A voice called out, "Ingrid Weber?" She looked up. Greta Hoffman, a radio operator from her unit, captured in the same retreat. They embraced. Tears threatened. They had thought each other dead. "Have you seen the bathroom?" Greta whispered urgently. "Have you seen what they've given us?" Before Ingrid could answer, a young American corporal appeared. Kind eyes. Careful posture. "Dinner is served," he said in broken German. "Please follow the path." The women exchanged glances. In German camps, meals were often skipped, sometimes no food at all. The idea of regular meals was almost unbelievable. As they walked, Ingrid noticed more. Guards stepped aside politely. Buildings were well kept. Prisoners played cards, read books, worked in gardens. "This can't be right," Ingrid murmured. "Maybe we were wrong," Greta said softly. The mess hall doors opened. Long tables. Place settings. American soldiers served real food. Meat, vegetables, bread. Not watery soup and stale bread. Ingrid caught fragments of conversation. Medical care for the sick. Packages from home. Recreation. Education. Every detail shattered her beliefs. If they were wrong about toilets and food, what else had they been lied about? Weeks passed. Ingrid was assigned to laundry duty. She worked alongside Sergeant Reynolds. The laundry room was warm. Modern machines hummed, a luxury in wartime Germany. The work felt more like a factory job, not prison labor. American guards treated them with respect. No hatred, no cruelty. One day, Ingrid spoke. "Martha," she said, using the sergeant's first name for the first time, "why do you treat us so well?" "We were enemies," she added. "We fought your soldiers." Martha folded clothes carefully. "Because that's who we try to be. The Geneva Convention sets minimum standards, but America usually goes beyond. It's about values. Every person has dignity, regardless of uniform or flag. Treating prisoners humanely is about keeping our own humanity." Outside, German men played volleyball. Laughter carried across the camp. Guards watched patiently, sometimes joining conversations, settling disputes calmly. Ingrid said quietly, We were told Americans had no culture, no honor, that you cared only for money and comfort. And what do you think now? Martha asked. Ingrid paused. Our leaders told us what they needed us to believe, not what was true. That evening, Ingrid wrote a letter home, trying to explain her experience, without sounding like she praised her captors. Greta asked, some women want to stay in America after the war. They say prisoners can apply for immigration. Families can sponsor them. Ingrid was shocked. Why would anyone want to stay in enemy territory? Look around, Greta said. Is this really enemy territory? Or just different from what we expected? The evening mail arrived. Ingrid received a small package. Soap, cigarettes, chocolate. A note from her mother. The American authorities had informed her family she was safe. Her mother's handwriting was careful. The city was rebuilding. Life was hard. Ingrid realized the war was lost. Everyone knew it. The question was no longer if Germany would surrender, but what would happen next? What if staying is better? Ingrid whispered to Greta, what if going home means returning to nothing? Outside, guards change shifts. No drama. No harsh commands. Just professional soldiers doing their jobs, treating prisoners with dignity. For the first time, Ingrid wondered, had the real enemy been alive? Winter came early to Tennessee. December 1944. Snow blanketed the camp. Cold bit through even the thickest coats. The Battle of the Bulge raged in Europe. Germany's last desperate strike. Hope flickered among the prisoners. Maybe the war wasn't lost yet. Ingrid stood by the barracks window. She watched American guards shovel snow. Methodical, careful. Even in war, they prepared for winter. The camp was warm. Heated barracks. Warm clothing. Food rations never cut. Greta joined her. They look worried, she whispered. Have you seen their faces when they read the news? The guards were tense, focused, but their treatment of prisoners didn't change. No harsher rules. No cuts and privileges. One afternoon, Sergeant Reynolds called Ingrid aside. Her face was serious. We've received reports, she said quietly. German forces are executing American prisoners. Ingrid's stomach twisted. She dreaded the question coming next. As leader of the women here, Martha continued, I need to know if you've heard anything about how Germans treat our prisoners. Ingrid hesitated. Loyalty warred with truth. I wasn't involved in prisoner operations, she said carefully, but I heard stories, not official policy. Some commanders ignored international law. Martha nodded. And how do you feel about that? Ingrid looked away. I've seen how you treat us. Medical care, respect, warmth. If Americans are being executed, she swallowed hard. They're wrong, not just breaking laws, but basic human decency. Martha's eyes softened. That's an honest answer. Outside, German prisoners help guards distribute Christmas packages, Red Cross gifts. In a German camp, this would be unthinkable. Fraternization forbidden. Martha leaned in. There's more. After the war, prisoners can apply for American citizenship. Ingrid blinked. Citizenship? Yes. Work programs, education, family sponsorship. You've lived under our system. You understand democracy. Some may choose to stay. That night, the women gathered around Greta's bunk. Whispers filled the room. Why would anyone want to stay? Bombed cities, occupied land, years of rebuilding. Flush toilets are life, someone joked. But the laughter was tinged with hope. Ingrid spoke softly. It's not about toilets. It's about dignity. A society that cares. Not just about war. Outside, the American flag snapped in the cold wind. For the first time, Ingrid wondered, what if she saluted that flag instead of fighting it? May 1945. The war ended. In the camp's recreation hall, prisoners gathered around a radio. President Truman's voice filled the room. Some wept for their lost homeland. Others sighed with relief. Ingrid sat beside Martha. What happens now? She asked. Repatriation starts soon, Martha said, but it's voluntary. Anyone can apply to stay. Voices rose in heated debate. Some wanted to return, to rebuild Germany. Others, like Greta, had decided they would stay. Ingrid thought about Martha's words. Strength isn't conquest. It's kindness. Victory doesn't need humiliation. That evening, Ingrid wrote her most important letter. To her mother, she explained she wouldn't return. She had applied for American citizenship. She had found work as a translator. 8 months as a prisoner had taught her more about freedom than 24 years in Germany. 2 weeks later, buses arrived. Repatriated prisoners prepared to leave. Ingrid stood with 37 women, those who chose to stay. They watched their comrades depart. Sadness, uncertainty, hope, no regrets. Martha asked. Ingrid smiled. How can I regret choosing a country that treats its enemies better than my homeland treated its own? As the buses disappeared down the highway, Ingrid realized the real miracle wasn't flush toilets or hot meals. It was a strength to show mercy, to win with humanity. Christmas 1946. Cincinnati, Ohio. Ingrid Weber Anderson stood in her kitchen. The warmth of the oven filled the room. She prepared dinner for family and friends. Among the guests were Greta and Maria, fellow former prisoners, now fellow Americans. Ingrid smiled as she moved around the kitchen. Her mother-in-law watched in amazement. You learned all this while you were a prisoner? She asked. Ingrid laughed softly. Yes, we learned more than cooking. They gathered around the table, sharing stories of war, of captivity, of transformation. We learned about democracy. Ingrid said, about individual rights, about living in a society that values human dignity. The conversation paused. A knock at the door. Martha Reynolds, now Martha Collins, stood there. She had driven from Nashville to join their reunion. Every year I'm amazed, Martha said, how well you've adapted. Greta smiled. We had good teachers. American values, Martha said. The best teachers, Greta agreed. Prison guards who showed us strength doesn't need cruelty, that victory doesn't demand humiliation. They raised their glasses. To second chances, Martha toasted. To flush toilets, Greta added with a grin. To America, Ingrid concluded, where they win even in humanity. Outside, snow fell softly, covering the quiet neighborhood. Here, former enemies had become neighbors. German accents mixed with Midwestern drawls, where lessons learned in a Tennessee prison camp blossomed. New lives built on a radical idea that people could choose their loyalties, their values, their futures. As they cleared the dishes, running water still felt miraculous. Ingrid thought about the stories she would tell her children, not about defeat, not about imprisonment, but about discovery, transformation, the day she learned true victory. Victory meant strength, strength to show mercy to those who had tried to destroy her world. Years passed. Ingrid's life unfolded in a new land. America became home. She married an engineer, built a family, raised children who knew peace. But the memories never faded. The war, the camp, the faces of those women. She often thought of Martha, the sergeant who showed kindness, who treated enemies with dignity. Ingrid understood then what true strength meant. Not domination, not cruelty, but compassion, respect, humanity. She told her story often, to friends, to neighbors, to her children. She spoke of the flushed toilets, the hot meals, the letters from home. But more than that, she spoke of hope, of second chances, of the power to change. Her story was a testament that even in the darkest times, light could be found, that enemies could become friends, that hatred could give way to understanding. Ingrid's journey was not just about survival. It was about transformation, about choosing a new path, a path where victory was measured not by conquest, but by the strength to show mercy. And in that mercy, she found freedom,